Welcome to Enrichment of Mind, Body, and Soul. How are you guys doing today? Tommy, how are you doing? Tom, how are you doing? I can't hear
I
you. How are
had
you
I had
doing?
to I had to turn my mic off. Sorry about that.
Yeah, how are you doing?
I'm okay. You know,
Great to have
I'll
you. Great.
talk about it later. I'm normally behind the scenes, and I'm not as comfortable being in front of a camera, and I don't enjoy the sound of my own voice as much as I used to.
You know what? You're good, Tommy. Don't even worry about it. You're good.
Yeah.
You're good. And this evening it is such an interesting topic, you know, and I was reflecting on this topic. The word where I broke down, you know, because in our lives, the word breakdown or broke down, it could mean so many things. But what comes to mind when somebody hear where I broke down, the mechanical aspect comes to mind right away. We think about a car, but there are so many things that can happen with breakdown. It could be mechanical, it could be emotional, it could be a structural breakdown, it could be a biological breakdown, it could be a spiritual breakdown. So it's so many breakdowns you're looking at here, right? But this evening, we have Tommy as our guest this evening. He normally be behind the scenes, but he decided that he's going to share his story with us this evening. His journey, where he broke down this, where he's living right now, and he's going to share his journey about love later in life. And many times we try to understand what is happening at the moment in our lives, and we use this experience many times, and we would say to ourselves, this is not making sense, but if we sit down and just analyze why things happen in our lives, down the line it starts to make sense why things happen. There is a reason why things happen in our lives. Nothing is by accident. Nothing is by accident. Each experience that we walk through, there is a reason why the experiences is happening. It's for our growth and for our evolution. But in the moment when these things are happening, we cannot see that. We cannot see the beauty in the experience. We cannot see the beauty in the challenge, because sometimes you find that fear, we are so anxious, and we question ourselves, why is this happening to me now? But then later down, when you look back, then you realize why these things happen. It's the reason why things happen in our lives. It's to help us on our journey. And many times you find that you may be in a relationship, you're new into a relationship, and it's not working out. But sometimes when we step back and we look deep and hard into a relationship and try to understand the individual that we're dealing with, because many times we're not healed and we are carrying around a lot of stuff. But if we can only step back and look at the person that we are dealing with and try to understand that individual, sometimes it may take years for us to really understand that person that we're dealing with. And when you really understand, then you say, wow, I have found love now. Because you start to look at the person with a different eye. And then over the years, a lot of layers are being peeled back. So you get to see things more clear, crystal clear. And you get to understand exactly what's happening or what happened with the individual that you're dealing with in a relationship. So sometimes we are too quick to judge because we don't understand. We judge what we don't understand. And sometimes it's good to just analyze what is happening at the moment. And once we can do that, we can able to see things through a different lens. And we are able to explore. Because once we start to see things different, we start to explore. And once we explore, we're gonna understand. But with all of that, self-love is very important. Because when you love yourself, you're able to see things on a totally different level. And it also helps us to understand persons on a totally different level as well. So this evening, Tommy, we just want to thank you so much for being vulnerable and to share your story with the world. And someone who may be looking at this podcast this evening can look at themselves, no matter how old you are. You can look at yourself and able to understand exactly what's happening in your life at this point in time. Because as I said before, the word breakdown is so many parts that we can talk about. The mechanical aspect, the spiritual aspect, the biological aspect, because the biological aspect is when your body is breaking down and your body is giving you signal because maybe the nourishment that you're putting into your body, it's not working for you. So the body start to break down. You start to get brain fog. So many things start to happen. So there is a breakdown. So the word breakdown, it could fit into so many aspects and areas in our lives. But this evening, we're going to allow Tommy to share his story. And if you know a friend who can benefit from this podcast this evening, we highly encourage you to share this podcast with someone. And if you have not subscribed yet to Soul Light and Body, we highly encourage you to subscribe to Soul Light and Body because every week we bring a guest on who can share a story, who can help you as an individual in your evolution. When you enter this space is to help you as an individual. We are here to just to help humanity. We are here to help to give you some tools that you can add to your toolkit as you move along this journey called life. Because some of us, we are facing some difficult challenges at this point in time. And when you can get some great tools that you can add to your toolkit, it's a blessing. It's truly, truly a blessing. So when you come into this space, it's nothing but goodies you're going to be receiving. Nothing but goodies. So if you're new to enrichment of mind, body, and soul, we just want to welcome you. And we just want to say that it's great to have you here. Just sit back, just relax, have a notepad, have a pen. And as we always say, it's a buffet style. You take what you need, and whatever you don't need, you could share it with someone else. So a very special welcome. So I am Lady K, holistic health and wellness coach, and a co-author of 2 books with my sister, Lady J, and my daughter. And it's Your Gut in You and Self-Care is Intentional. And both is up on Amazon for purchase. And also we have a digital magazine and a hard copy magazine. And if you have not subscribed yet, the link is in the comments below that you can go, you can subscribe, and whichever part of the world you're living, you can have the digital version. And if you're living in the United States, you can have the hard copy arrive at your doorstep. It's a beautiful magazine. There's some great articles, and we have guests who came on to this show or other platforms that we have. They normally write articles, beautiful articles, and you can read these articles. And also they have like great menus in the magazines. It's just great. Just go subscribe. Just go and subscribe, and you will experience that magazine when you receive it. It's free of cost. You don't have to pay for it. It's free of cost. So I'm not going to take up much more time. I'm going to toss the mic now to Tommy Thompson. Tommy, welcome you from coming behind the scenes and coming to the forefront and sharing your story with us this evening. A special welcome to you. Take the mic, Tom.
Oh, thank you. I had my mic open. I hope I wasn't making too many disgusting little band
No,
noises
no,
there in
that's
the
okay,
background.
Tom.
Okay. But normally you don't see me. I'm behind the scenes and I make little comments and share things out. I'm going to share this to a few other people and to the usual Facebook pages. Um, what happened was is I was telling this story and I don't remember when and I don't remember where, but I think it was like a couple years ago. And Joan heard it and she says, "Oh my God, that's like a book. You've got to do something with it." And what I told her, and I called it "Where I Broke Down is Where I Now Live." And that's what happened. And I think I'll first tell the story, just a little background information. When I was a kid, I was on the spectrum pretty deep. I couldn't relate to people. I couldn't make good connections. And I spent a lot of time alone and playing alone. If I was lucky, I might have one or two friends. And as I got older, it didn't improve. And I was in the Army for uh, 8 years, 2 months, and 22 days. So in 1970, there was a thing called the draft to encourage young men to do things. And I went in and I ended up in bomb disposal and had some interesting times in there. Went in 1970 and got out in early 79. So that changed me desperately. And I ended up in a psych ward. And I kind of always knew from the time I was a teenager that something was going to break in me. I just knew it. I just knew it. And I barely made it out of the Army intact. And yeah, ended up in a VA in a city and I was doing a lot of drugs, drinking all the time. I think I got a hold of something. I'm not sure, but it was my time. I was 28 and it was my time to break. And they call it paranoid schizophrenia. I later went to somebody who specialized it and said, "Man, you are classic PTSD," and you broke. So that was 79. And I ended up moving to stay with my folks in St. Louis. I hitchhiked across the country, worked in Wyoming in the oil fields and on a ranch for a while. And I ended up at my folks' place in 80 and I found a woman and she and I moved in together in 81. And my grandfather had died. And this is important because I'm going to be bringing this is part of the story too. So I go up and stay with my grandmother late October, early November of 1981, right? I was 30 years old and the economy was pretty crappy then, at least in the St. Louis area where we lived. And I could not find a decent job. So I figured, oh, I'll move back up to home to Michigan and somehow I'll find something to do. I'll go to work at this nuclear power plant, whatever. And no, they weren't interested in hiring me. I had some background working with radiation, with having been in bomb disposal. They trained me in a lot of things, but they weren't going to hire somebody like me. And my grandfather had died and my grandmother was just brokenhearted the year before. So anyway, I'm staying there and I'm having her buy me cigarettes, and everything else. And she said, "I can't afford for you to live here. You just can't." So I took whatever. I had an old car. It actually belonged to my girlfriend. It was a 76 Mustang too. And the tires in back were almost bald. And here I am driving from Michigan back to St. Louis on nearly bald tires, right? And it wasn't a very good car. And I had just enough money for gas. And I would have to throw some oil in it if you've ever had an oil burner to make it home. And I'm going way too far into this. But what happened was, as I am driving down US 31, I shouldn't have taken that way, but I'm glad I did. God put me on that road. A friend told me, "Oh, I'll just go down to 31 and cut over to 70 to St. Louis." Well, that put an extra 100 miles on the journey at least or more. So I'm driving, and all of a sudden, there's some curves there. All of a sudden, it feels funny. And then I realized, my God, I got a flat tire. So I pulled over to the right, and I was on an overpass, right? An overpass that isn't even there anymore. So I go to this overpass, and I realize I have a flat tire, and it is cold. It had been snowing as I was driving there. It was cold. And like I said, I only had enough I would run till I just couldn't stand the cold anymore. I really wasn't dressed for it. I would run the car heater. I spent all night on that overpass. I was said, oh, a state trooper's got to stop, or sheriff, somebody's going to stop and help me. So I spent the whole night there. I used to love to drive at night. And I don't know why, I just did. I did a lot of driving, and so I spent the night there. Nobody stopped. Hi there, Lisa. And anyway, this big Buick, a big car pulled up, older car pulled up behind me. And this enormous man got out. He was taller than me, and he must have weighed 300 and some pounds, but it was big pounds. He was a local farmer. Okay. And his wife was in there, and he was talking to me. And I said, look, I got what I had, my flat tire. I mean, my spare was flat and had a big rip in it. So there was no way you could use it, right? Particularly to drive home, another 250 miles or something. And they took me, I got the tire off. They took me to this little town called Argus, right? And these people, he took me to a tire shop. They were well known there, and you could tell they were very well thought of. And they were older, probably way up in their 50s. And I weighed 185 pounds, and I was 6'1". They called me a little guy. Oh, you're a little guy. And and that was just an example of the kindness that God brought my way despite me. I'd been out of the psych ward just a little over 2 years, and I was really rocky. And I got the tire fixed. I started driving, but I'd been up virtually all night. I couldn't sleep. It was cold. And right after I crossed into Illinois in 70, I just couldn't drive anymore. And I pulled over. And I'll get back to where I broke down was important in a minute, but I wanted to share this, and I don't think I've ever told this story to either Karen or Joan. And I closed my eyes, and my grandfather had died the year before. He was right there. I mean, I no more than closed my eyes, and there was my grandfather wearing one of his favorite suits. They were from the Deep South. They'd been sharecroppers and migrant workers that moved up north during World War II, like so many, and thought they'd found paradise working 12-hour shifts in foundries and factories. It was a heck of a lot better than picking somebody or chopping somebody else's cotton. And he was in this suit that he liked, this blue pinstripe suit, old cut, probably something from the 40s or early 50s. Hey, Ray. And he came to me, and he had like a straw hat on that he sometimes used to wear. And he shook my hand. And the only thing I can tell you is that he had my grandfather's essence. But and he was very, very religious. He was apostolic. If you know what that kind of church, he was very rugged. And since he hadn't spoken in tongues, he very well may have died thinking he was going to go to hell, because that's how rigid they are, at least at that time in the church. I think they pretty much still are. And it was weird. It was like we were comrades, like we were equal. And he basically communicated to me without words. Nice life. Good to see ya. Catch you later. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. He took me out of my body like 100 miles north where my grandma was in a back bedroom, sobbing her eyes out. She had moved out of the bedroom she shared with my grandpa and had moved into a back bedroom on this small little bed. Hey, Brianna. And she was bawling her eyes out. And he'd been dead for, I don't know, almost a year. And he let me know that this hurt him. He didn't like her mourning like that, So he let me know. And I've heard that sometimes when people really grieve them, it's difficult for people's energy to completely pass on, you know. And there's Queenie. Hey, Christine. Sorry if it's not too coherent, but he let me know, and he wondered if I could help her somehow. And later, some years later, I would spend time up there with her. And, my grandmother lived until she was 97, and she would have been, she's born in 1913, so you can do the math on that. She was in her 70s when he died, early 70s, and she was a fine looking woman, and of course she never even thought about remarrying. Most of the ladies from that era, when their husband died, they did not remarry. That was just something they didn't do. And anyway, in my family, my mother came back to my brother after she passed because she didn't believe she was dead, right? And I had a cousin, beautiful, brilliant girl, who committed suicide with a shotgun when she was away to college when she was 22. And she had appeared to her sister. My uncle, who had died, came to my aunt. So this is something, and that also happened with my cousin's wife from Brazil, that the father had come through. And hey, Queenie, and the other Queenie. So this was fairly normal in my family, and I had experiences from the time I was young. But let me explain where the title came from. And I'll explain a little bit more of what I believe about this. At that exact time, that I was broken down, this creature here was living a few miles away, and she was divorcing her current husband. This is a picture of my Diana when she was 18 and had already had a kid. So she got married at 16. She was pregnant. They got married. They're Catholics, They got married, and this is her when she was about 18. And she'd already had a baby, and she graduated from school. And her hair was that red when I met her, quite a few years later. And she had a pretty hard life and had a hard marriage with a brutal. Karen is the first queen. All right. I agree. Yeah.
Queenie.
But, and I'm sorry if this isn't as articulate as I want it, but this woman was not that many miles from me. This is just a little north of where we live. We took that road all the time, and I didn't know it at that time. And she and I both have had 4 failed marriages, including one to each other. And she was going through a hard time, and it had a very hard childhood where a lot of her health issues today are because she was virtually starved as a child. That's how hard their lives were living out in California, So where I broke down is where I now live. That's where the title came from. And I'm not going to ask anybody to believe the way I do. I believe in reincarnation because I was shown things when I was 20 years old. Uh, Someone I believe was a soul guide took me out of my body and showed me little flashcards. And the only one I retained is I was in charge of a bunch of guys walking through sand, going to these ruins, and I was tired unto death. I was so sick of war and killing and responsibility and discipline. And I was just totally beyond exhaustion to a soul level. And I remember being shown that. I was 20 years old. I was out doing some very dangerous work in bomb disposal where I was working then as a 20-year-old. And I didn't know where to put that, with my, rugged Pentecostal upbringing. I just did not know where to put that. I was, like, what's going on? And I was shown like 5 other things, but I don't remember them. But by the time I was 81, after having lost my stuff, I had an awareness where I began to believe in reincarnation. And then I had a place when I was 28 years old to put that, because suddenly I was aware of it, different energies and all kinds of things. And I ended up in the psych ward, and it took a while to recover. I was still really rocky in 1981 because that happened in 79. And what I believe today is that we're all connected. We're all connected. They talk about ley lines and a grid around the earth. I studied a few years ago to be a Pakokuna shaman of the Quero, Inca tradition, from a people way, way up in the Andes where they didn't even find them in Peru until like 1950. And the minute I started checking this out, I was given an opportunity to study it. And it's basically, it doesn't go against anybody's church or other religion. It's basically a form of nature mysticism, a deep connection, which I had as a child. I used to go out and play in the woods without, deep woods without fear, and spend a lot of time out there alone. And I had a deep connection to the animals and the things around me in the woods. And I was much more comfortable there than I was in a world of people. And that redhead right there was getting divorced from her first husband. And like I said, was just a few miles from me, and I didn't know. And I believe that if you've ever studied some of the works, and I may even put something in there so that if you're interested, you can go find it. There are audible books from a guy called Michael Newton, PhD. And this to me explains a lot of things. What it is this psychologist was confirmed atheist, also a military historian, but he didn't believe in any of that bunk about reincarnation and all that silly stuff. By God, he was a man of science. So he's a psychologist, and this guy has this phantom pain in his side, and he wakes up screaming every night, waking his wife up, and they've checked him out. There's nothing wrong with him. So he goes, something must have happened in his childhood. So he takes them into deep hypnosis to find the cause of this, and he can't find it. And no, can't find it. So Dr. Newton said, okay, when did this pain start? This guy starts screaming, oh, I'm stabbed. Oh, I'm dying. Oh, it hurts. He was in 1916, he was in like the first Battle of Arras, in terrible battle. They killed like 20,000 troops in a day. The British used to just do that. It was awful. The slaughter was awful. And this guy had died from a bayonet wound horribly in the mud. And he says, okay, quiet down. Okay, you won't remember this. There's nothing going on. And there's a reason why I'm telling this story. So he goes ahead, and he's also an amateur military historian. He'd gone to military school. And so he asked him, okay, what's your name? What's your rank? What's your regiment? What emblem is on your shoulder and your hat? Because each English regiment has a distinctive crest. And asked him what was on his shoulder. I think they used corps designation. And so he wrote all this stuff down, and he wrote to the British War Office. There was a man with that name, that rank, in that unit that died in the first day of that battle. And he was like, huh. And that was my experience too. Like, huh. And then he had another woman that came through, and she was just lonely and couldn't make a connection. She was just lonely and unhappy. She was professional, nice looking woman. He checked her out. She didn't have, depression. She didn't have any of those problems. She was just lonely and unhappy and couldn't form a good human connection. Kind of reminds me of me. And so you think he would have figured something out. So he's taking her farther back. Oh, something must have happened to her. Oh, yeah, we'll get to the bottom of this with hypnosis. Keeps taking her back. And he should have learned his lesson. He said, okay, when's the last time you remember being happy? And she just got this beautiful smile on her face, and tears were just rolling out of her eyes. And he's like, whoa, where are you? What's going on? She said, I'm with my soul family before I came into this life. I'm in my true home and my soul family, and I need to toughen up. So for the first time ever, I came into this life without my close soul group. And you don't need to believe this, but I had always thought from the time I was a child, I was raised in a very, very strict church. And even when I was 10 or 11, it didn't make any sense to me. Why would God be like that? Why would God send everybody to hell except a few of us? And I didn't think I was going to make it either, even as a child. Why would God do that? How does any of this make any sense? Why are these people in China and down in deep Africa going to hell, and a few, mostly hillbillies in our church, are going to somehow go to heaven magically, and all them Catholics and all them other horrible people are going to hell, And I was programmed with hours of that, and it didn't make any sense to me. So anyway, when I read this, somehow I just knew it was true when I read this book. And this woman explained in detail how she was with her soul family, and they all decided that she would come in. So none would be her sister, her mother, her husband, any of the other ways that she had been connected with them in life after life after life. And by the way, Lady K and I both know that we've had more than a few together, and they weren't always good ones either. Lady K, you were quite the disciplinarian, is all I gotta say. She thinks it's funny. But and anyway, this freaks him out. So he does 6,000 cases and writes a book, Journey of Souls. It's on, I should have grabbed some. I may even put something in the comments. Michael Newton, PhD, first one was Journey of Souls, and the second book was Destiny of Souls. You can find them on YouTube for free in audio in 2 parts. These changed my life and how I saw the world. I had believed in a lot of this, but I didn't have any way to define it. And by the way, I had one of those sessions in May and June of 2021, where one of the practitioners he trained took me back. And I don't want to go into it because some of it's very personal, very private. But what I can tell you without a doubt in my mind is that we are multidimensional beings, and you are so much more than you know. I don't care where you came from, what your life is. You're so much more than you know. And you have that sacred spark of the creator in you. And I was not a good person for most of my life. I was unhappy. I was miserable. I couldn't hold a job. I was an alcoholic, an addict. Um, I was just one crazy thing after another. And Diana lived much the same life. You know, she's 9 years younger than me. And I just love that picture of her and that smile on her face. That would have been probably about 78, I would guess. She was born in 58. I also believe, and I've seen doing meditations, uh, a golden grid around the earth that is like love and energy. And I even see my place in it. I'm somewhere way out in the North Pacific where there's nobody else living and there's no islands or anything. But I see that so many of us have a mission here to be a conduit for spirit. Each one of us have. We're each a conduit and we're all connected. And in my practice of the Pakwakuna tradition, they called these Seike lines. So I had a line to Diana here when I broke down there. I had a line to her, and the way they describe it is they call them Seike lines. They're energy lines of love that connect us with others. And sometimes you can feel that. When I first saw Lady K there, she friended me, right? And I'm like, okay. And she had this black and white picture and this other picture. And I just stared and stared and stared at it because I knew her. I didn't understand where, I didn't understand why, but I knew her. And in January of 2021, she told me that I would bring her out to the world. So we started this thing here and called it Soul, Light, and Body. And they started having guests and started doing shows. I didn't know anything about doing shows. I didn't know anything about anything. And a guy from Australia and I, Brooks, started doing it. And we had Lady K on, and she used to just giggle mostly in the beginning. And now, boy, when you hear her and Joan, like, I interrogate these guests or ask them questions, it's unreal. It just where this came from to be where this is at now. And I believe that there were lines between us in this life, and we were waiting for that moment to come together. And I can almost guarantee, no matter how hard your life has been, that you have these relationships too. And I want to talk a little bit about when I first saw this redhead, right? So we're both in a 12-step program, right? And I had seen her, and I'd seen her in the store I'd worked in, right? And I tried to go, hey, can I help you? And she just ignored me, had that redhead look and just walked by me, something I'm very familiar with now. And I was kind of like, And then later I realized I'd known her years before when she was with, and this would have been 2001, right? So we go to a picnic with this 12-step meeting, and this redhead with hair down to her waist comes walking up this hill to me, to us. I was talking with some friends, in the 12-step program, and I was covered in sand, sweaty. I was, didn't have a shirt on. We've been playing volleyball in a sand pit. I looked like crap, although I physically looked a hell of a lot better than I do now. And she came up and we kind of looked at each other. And then she went down the hill to get a Coke, down at this pavilion where we were at, And she came up the hill And they talk about this in, excuse me, in Michael Newton's books. And as she was walking up the hill, you know, Midwestern sun was behind her. It was Labor Day, and her hair was just she was just radiant in the sunlight, and her figure was just outlined perfectly. And I was looking at her, and I was just like, I was stunned, because this was a checkpoint in my life, meeting her. This is something, okay, if both of you manage to stay alive and get to this point, get to this cross point, this CK line, to this where your energies cross, this is what you're going to see and this is what you're going to feel. And I believe each one of us come in. If you remember, particularly in the old days, like my grandparents who were World War I generation, or that World War II, the older generations, when love and marriage really meant something. You know what I mean? We didn't disconnect if we had a bad weekend. We didn't get divorced because somebody didn't make us happy. And so many of the people from that era, like my grandparents and that, the minute I met her, the minute I met him, I knew we were going to be married. And I've had that a couple times in my life with a couple women, including the third wife, as crazy and as sad as that was, and the second and the first. You know, I was supposed to be with them for a purpose. There was a purpose, whether to bring a child into the world or else fulfill some part of karma or destiny for both of us. As sad and bad as it was, you know, I've lost everything I own 5 or 6 times in my life, including once with Diana. And I want to explain our relationship. This is a tree out in the local state park, right? I walked by this, I don't know how many times before I finally noticed it. I have never seen anything like this. And I spent a lot of time in the woods and mountains all over the country. And what it is 2 trees, 2 oaks that grew together and rubbed against each other. And you can't see it very well, but they're joined by this heart-shaped growth where if you go to the other side, I wish I had a better picture. These 2 literally grew together and support each other. And they rubbed against each other. The irritation when they're saplings caused them to join. And I said, how much like that is Diana and I. To me, every time I walk by this tree when I'm out in the woods, that's a symbol of our love and the hard times we went through. You know, we have been together. In October, it will be 24 years. And we've been divorced since 2011, but moved back in together. And I've never been happier. And she's happy too. And we are not happy people. And one day I woke up next to her, or it kind of happened over a period, and I realized that she was my best friend. An example of the type of thing would happen is she would tell me something 6 months before, you need to look at this. This ain't a good idea, blah, 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 you know, and I'm like, yeah, whatever. And somebody else would tell me the same thing. And I'd go, oh, wow, man, you wouldn't believe what so-and-so just told me. And then wonder why she was pissed off, you know. But we had some hard times and we grew together. And now we're support each other just like these 2 trees. These are 2 discrete trees, totally different. There's a picture of her and me, both of us quite a bit younger, in 2003 when her daughter Rachel was graduating from high school up in South Bend where we lived at the time. And yeah, that's my baby. We're both considerably larger than that now. But yeah, So I met her up there and didn't realize till later when we visited that I had been through where she lived in its very rural area and realized even later it's where I broke down. And she was getting divorced from her first husband there, who was very brutal. And yeah,
Wow. Tom,
I
just
yeah,
listening to you sharing this story, you know, we never know why things happen in our lives. Everything that happens in our lives, it happens for a reason. But many times we cannot see the reason why at that point in time because we're not looking for the reason why this is happening, right? And later in life or later down the line, when we do reflection, then we really understand the reason why something happened in our lives. Because where you broke down, you had to broke down at that point in time there at that spot, that particular spot. Because you're looking back on your life now, and now you can gather all the tools together to understand the reason why you broke down there at that point in time. And when we look at life, as you look at nature, because you talked about nature, you talked about the tree as a symbol. When you look at that tree, it clearly brings a significant meaning to your relationship with Diana. So nature teaches so much about life, and it helps us to understand that we all are connected, as you said. Everything is connected. It all depends on how we look at it, how we view an experience, how we view a situation, how we look at a challenge, because everything is connected and there's a reason why things happen in our lives. It's to help us, to take us on the journey that we're on. And no journey is smooth. There is no smooth in any journey. And something else that came to mind is that when you said about the checkpoint, you talked about the checkpoint, you know, many of us have that checkpoint in our lives, and the checkpoint is to help us understand more about ourselves. It's to take us in depth about our lives and our journey here on earth. But many times we are so quick to judge a situation or an experience. We are quick to judge it instead of looking into it. We are quick to judge it. But life, when we really take a hard look at life, it clearly shows us that our journeys may be different, but it all depends on the modality we use whenever that time arises in our lives. Because we need to pause and we need to look at a situation when something is happening. Because you broke down at a particular place at a particular time. And because you broke down there, you was able to find Diana there. So when things happening in our lives, as I said before, it's a reason. It is a reason. It could be a reason to connect you to some individual. It could be a reason for you to check in with yourself. It could be a reason for, if you break down, say the car is broken down, it could be a reason for you to meet someone, maybe someone to come and help you with the car. It's so many things could happen in a situation. So we need to view situations in our lives with a different eye and look at it as though it's happening in our lives at this point. Is to help us on our journey. Can you share a moment with us when you realize that your car is breaking down? How did you feel at that point in time? What are some of the things you said to yourself at that point in time when you realize, okay, my car is going to break down now? You know, what are some of the things you told yourself at that point in time?
Well, I was very unhappy. Back in the olden days, we didn't have cell phones. And where it broke down now, there's a McDonald's and a great big gas station and all these businesses, right? There was absolutely nothing there in 1981. That's over 40 years ago. And now there's all these businesses along here. I was out in the middle of nowhere. I was like 30 miles from quite a few miles from any decent town. And this place wasn't even close. I had to go several miles to go to this tiny little town. And I didn't have enough money to get another tire or even fix the tire. I had just enough to get me home. Just enough. And I knew I was going to have to put in a quart of oil or two, in order to get home. The vehicle was not something most people would drive. I can't imagine me today doing that, you know? And I just thought the situation was hopeless. Oh my God, I'm out here, I'm freezing, I don't have any extra money. I was very unhappy. And I was so negative back then. Unless I was using booze or drugs or something like that, you know, I was always looking for something outside of myself to fix me. And I was very unhappy. And my grandmother couldn't do anything for me unless I, had gone to a phone and called her and had her come down and give me some money or something. And that wasn't fair, and it was
Mhm.
cold. And somehow or another, that wonderful couple stopped and helped me. They saw the Missouri plates in my car, and they were just two earth angels. Great, big, round German farmers, which is where my wife's family came from. They had also been farmers, and she'd been a farm wife for a while. And I was there to make a connection for reasons I don't understand. Like I said,
Mhm.
these lines connect us, not always in a good way. And sometimes those people in my life were brought in there to teach me a lesson or to balance something out. And I'm 74 now, and I can look back at stuff and it makes sense. But man, it was miserable when I was there.
Mhm.
I couldn't stand the rawness of life, reality. And I stayed drunk or high from the time I was 16 years old until I finally quit when I was 46 years old. And she also did. And that's how we met. But she had to go through the bad, brutal relationships, the brutality in her family, and every type of abuse you can imagine she suffered as a child and a young teen growing up in that home. And that's not my story to tell. And we came together to heal each other and be a healing presence for other once we'd taken care of ourselves. And we had hard years. We lost everything we owned pretty much. ended up with a bunch of stuff. We still got a storage space that's been in there since 2011, covered in dirt. It's because it's by a farm field and a storage space. With all this stuff that used to be in our house, we lost. We lost our house that we were buying. She got injured and became disabled. And I lost my job. So we went in 1997 from making $106,000, no, 2007, and I was out of work several months. We made $106,000 together, right? When we broke up and lost the house and her car, I made $4,500 that year. And we ended up moving back with her family, with her uncle, to the very close to the place where I broke down. And I love what you were saying about the breakdowns in life. Was a marriage, a loving relationship. Somebody dies that's very important in your life.
Yes. A few weeks ago, I went into my front yard to do some cleaning. And I looked at a car, and the man was outside standing with two little kids, a boy and a girl, right? And the little girl said, "Hi, Miss Lady." So I walked up to the gate and I said, "Hi." And then the father, he came around from the other side of the car, and he said, "I'm sorry that my car, it's not working. My car break down. It's not working. And I've just called someone to come and help me with my car." So I said to him, I said, "It's quite okay." I said, "It's quite okay." And I looked at the two kids. They were just sitting on the pavement. And I opened the gate and I said to him, I said, "You know what? These two kids could come and sit on my steps. It's okay." So the same time, my neighbor was coming to cut the grass. So I said to him, I said, we need to get some water for these kids, and even for the gentleman too. Let's get some water for them. So we got some water, we gave it to them. And the gentleman, he came into the yard as well. And he started to tell me his story. And he said to me, he said, "You know what? I broke down here for a particular reason." So I said, "What's the reason?" And he said to me, he said, "Maybe it's to help you to clean up your yard in front." And I said, "Okay." I said to him, I said, "This sounds very interesting." Then the little boy said to me, he said, "Miss Lady, I'm going to help as well." And I said, "Okay." So they start to pick out the grass. And as they're picking out the grass, I'm looking at them, the three of them. I'm looking at them and I'm saying to myself, this is a connection. I said, this is a connection, because some connections only happen for just minutes. It may happen just for a moment, but it's a connection. It's a connection for that point in time. So they started to pick out the grass, and I went inside and I got some little goodies for the little kids, and I bring it back for them. And they were so happy at that point in time. And then he turned and he said to me, he said, the kids were thirsty, right? They didn't have anything to eat in like about a couple hours, right? And he said that it's good that the car broke down there, which is in front of my home, that they could get something to eat. And it felt so good when he said that, because again, you just never know what someone is going through. At that point in time, if I didn't invite the kids to come in, I could have never really understand what's happening with him and the kids. And the story went on much longer, but I'm not going to work to share that part of the story, you know. But we just never know. Things just happen in our lives for a particular reason. That is why we need to always show compassion to people, because we just don't know what the other person is going through at that point in time. We may look at a person, because many times you see a person may be laughing, they look happy, but within that person, they're going through a lot of stuff internal. There's an internal turmoil that is happening with a lot of people, you know. And if you can just share a kind word with someone, it makes them feel worthy of themselves, and at least they know that someone cares. See, it's always good to extend love and kindness to people. Sometimes you find that you may do it, but do not do it with expectation of anything in return. Because many times we do things and expecting something coming back, because it's not who we do for, it's going to do back for us. You got to sow the seeds, and you never know when you're going to reap that harvest. You just don't know when you're going to reap that harvest, you know. So in life, things happen. And when it happened for a reason. Again, we may not see it that way, because many times we are going through our own healing process. But sometimes that person come to help you at that point in time with your healing journey as well. They may say a word to you, and it may thing a light bulb in your head, and then you say, oh yeah, you know what, this is it. So you just never dismiss something, because many times we don't understand why things happen and we dismiss things, you know. So we need to look at things with a different eye. As we move through life and move through our journey, we need to look at things with a different eye. And Tom, you're sharing your story. It's helping us to really understand that when things happen, it happened for a reason. It happened to us for a reason. It happened for us for a reason. There is no mistake. There is absolutely no mistake on our journey here. No mistake. But again, it all depends on how we look at our journey here, and look at the things and the events and the challenges and the experiences that we go through in our life as lessons that we need to go through in order to evolve. Because look at you now, Tom. From then to now, you're not the person you was in 2019. You're not the person in 2011. You have evolved. And because of these experiences, it helped you to evolve. Now you're able to look back at these experiences, and now you understand why these experiences happen. And that's the beauty. The beauty is looking back at the experiences, the challenges, whatever it is, and see the true meaning why you broke down in this particular spot was to meet Diana. That's the reason, it was to meet Diana. Can you share with us, when you went into that psych ward, how did you feel? What was happening internal with you? What are some of the things you told yourself at that point in time? How did you feel? Could you really share that with us?
Sure. I am doubly blessed. Most people that go as far as I did into psychosis, into a psychic break, um, is who's global media? Is that Annie or
Any,
I thought so.
any.
Boy, it's late over there. It's
Yeah,
like
he's
one
up
o'clock
pretty
in the
late.
1 o'clock in the morning. My God, he's what? You need to have them back as a guest, man. That
Yeah,
whole
he's good,
crew
and
over
he's
there.
good. And he thank you for joining
Oh yeah,
us.
yeah. Um, what happened is I was drinking and had moved out for my first wife, who was a Korean lady. We had bought a house, and I was living out alone out in Washington State, and that is a very spiritual area. It was there then when the people were unusual. And one day I woke up and I was just different. I'd been barely holding on to sanity, and I knew from the time I was 14 that one day I was going to lose it. And I did when I was 28. And I just got out of the army. I'd barely been holding on, and I was drinking and using drugs. And all of a sudden, the people on the television started making faces and talking back to me. And I'm kind of like, okay. And I had a decent job and I just walked off of it. And I started doing some very strange behavior. And I'll just tell you about one. And I mean, I was in psychosis. And when you're in that place, here I'm messing around with things I should be leaving alone now. When you're in that place, for me, it's like being in a dream, insane and strange dreams can be. Well, that's where I was, only nobody else was in the dream. And I thought people were different, and I became very aware of different energies and stuff. And I had been aware of things like that from a childhood, but I didn't know what was going on. But I could feel energetic things in the places I went and out in the country, out in different places, out in the woods there and in the mountains. And I would just drive around and I got worse and worse and worse. And I could be riding high, oh my God, I I was doing physical things that were insane. I would go and run down a rough dirt road at 12 o'clock at night in pitch darkness as fast as I could possibly run and not stumble or anything. Each one of us have abilities and things that we never touch. And all kinds of things happen. One of the things I'll talk about is this is in Washington State, not far from Tacoma. I lived in a town called Port Orchard. And there's a bridge across there. If you've ever seen Gallup and Gertie, there's a film clip of a bridge, a suspension bridge, flying around with the wind in the Tacoma Narrows. And there's a car on it and a dog, and a guy runs out there and gets the dog and brings it back. I think that was 1939. And that bridge crashed into the Puget Sound, and it's like a couple 100 feet up. It's on these cliffs, right? So I go to the far side of this bridge and park my car in this little park there. So it's about 11 o'clock at night. And back in those days, you can figure over half the people driving are stoned or drunk. And it's a 4-lane over that bridge. I get the idea that they can't see me and that they can't hurt me. Those vehicles are just parked, pass through my body. I go out and walk on that bridge with traffic roaring by me inches away. Walk down that bridge about a quarter mile. I think it's about I don't know, probably not as far as I thought. I took Diana and showed her that bridge in 2004 when we were out there visiting our grandkids. And I walked about halfway down, turned around and walked back. Cars just whizzing by me. And get off the bridge, got back in my car and drove back. And there was all kinds of other things like that. But that's just one example of the kind of things that were going on. And eventually, they put me in the hot city hospital. A lawyer got me out. And then my behavior got worse and crazier. I became violent, and they put me back in. And then I went to a state hospital, and then I was transferred from there to the Veterans Hospital. and they drugged me so hard. And what it's like is slamming into a wall at 190 miles an hour. Psychically, I definitely broke down and went back to stay with my folks in Missouri for a while, and then went back. And then, I went from Washington State back and forth, and I ended up hitchhiking in 1980 through Wyoming and Montana, and right after Mount St. Helens blew, and there was 3 foot of ash in the dishes and stuff from that volcano. And I'm hitchhiking through there. I just leave my car, I leave everything, I start hitchhiking with a guy, and eventually end up working in the Wyoming oil field. How I survived that is, ignorant as I used to get in those bars, those oil field bars, I'll never know. But I realize now that grace was protecting me through all this crazy stuff, the years in the Army and bomb disposal, driving so drunk at, my God, and so many things in my life, including when I was in the psych wards. I was protected and carried through all that because there was purpose and not because I was special. Almost all of us are. And I truly believe my hillbilly grandma, and that's us standing in front of her house. We had sold it because nobody could live there. There was no work or anything, and none of us could live there. So we sold my grandmother's house. And my dad was dying from cancer then. So we sold my grandmother's house that they'd had since like 1947 or 48. And my brother's wife rented it for $3,000 for a week because it's, on by Lake Michigan. $3,000 to keep the family there. And he bought us a motel for the week too. And it's a resort town, South Haven, Michigan, where I was born. And that's Diane and me in 2014 there. I just retired and I just quit smoking July. And I had a wonderful time with the family. And we had not had many of those due to the nature of me and who I was and my alcoholism and addiction and just the nature of me, and this is just a happy time to be with them. And that's when Diane and my life started to change. This is where we live now. And there's a field over there, and we see deer out there a lot of nights. And that's the truck I got from my uncle. And that was March of 2018. And I just wanted to share a few of those pictures with her. And
Wow.
I look at that and I'm just, wow.
Wow.
But when you asked me how I felt totally hopeless. I couldn't connect reality. And then they drugged me so bad, it took me a year and a half to get it back. And I've never been quite the same since then. But these things needed to happen so that later in life, working with other alcoholics and addicts, I had the compassion and the sensitivity to be able to relate. The marriage that failed, one of the marriage, and he had a woman much like who I'd been married to at that time. And he would come to me and I could look at him and just know that he'd been on the phone with her and she'd been running game on him. And I told her,
Mm.
this is what I think is happening. And I actually went and saw him. I was sponsoring him in a 12-step program. And oh man, his whole life was broke. He couldn't feed himself or his kids. He owed this, he owed that. And it all ended up working out for him. And we went down and visited him. And this is what the story I've got to tell about how we ended up living here, right? Where we're at right here. And what happened was she got hurt. She became disabled. We were living on my paycheck. Her son was staying with us and not working. And we lost everything. So we moved back here. I finally get a job just before she gets her settlement, finally, after 3 years, ends up in disability. She's has a bunch of health problems, which we won't go into. And I'm pretty much her caretaker. And she did not want to move back here. She had no happy memories of living here. She's related to half of this small town. You know, she just didn't want to go back where she had all this unhappy memories. But this is where we're supposed to be, so that I could work with the people I worked with. The people that work with me could be here, so that we could be here when her mother passed, and to be
Mm-hmm.
here to heal, help other people heal. I was just doing something with somebody now, and to have us heal. And I am so grateful that she is in my life now. And
Mm.
believe me, it was like where those two trees rubbed together and then joined together. That's a perfect analogy, a perfect metaphor for our lives
Mm-hmm.
together, because it was really rough. Each of us came to this relationship with so many wounds and so much anger and very, very low self-esteem,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And I'd lost everything. And I found a job and I worked for a few more years, and it was unbelievable hours. And I just walked off the job one day and retired. We couldn't afford for me to do it, but we did it. And our lives started to change. And probably in just the last 2 years, I woke up and realized she was my best friend. And we're both happy. I can't imagine being with anybody but her.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And she tells people she's happy. You know, that's that our lives just weren't that. I was one of the most negative people I ever met. And a lot of alcoholics and addicts are. Nothing was ever good enough. I was never happy. You know what I mean? Oh, the woman or the relationship I was in was not good enough. Nothing was
Mm-hmm.
good enough. Nothing was okay. Nothing was good enough. I'd come in and everything would be great. And I was also a runner. I'd go, I was in the military, so I was constantly being transferred around. Um, I always wanted something that wasn't there. And once I got to that place or that job or that degree or whatever, or that certification, it wasn't enough. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't good enough. The house we bought wasn't enough. I wasn't enough. People were mean to me at work. I was a I was a terrible soldier. I was in the Navy briefly, an even worse sailor. And I was just not suited for that kind of life.
Mm-hmm.
And, but I'm suited for the life we have now.
Yes.
And I'm so grateful for that. And as you said, you can look back and you can see the gentle guidance from our higher power
Mm-hmm.
and the energies that are here for us, that are here for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember sometimes those quiet little touches. So in 1996, I was going to commit suicide. Wrote a suicide note, put it in a plastic bag, took a shotgun loaded with double-aught buck. It was a deer slayer with a short barrel. Pulled up to a state police post because I knew the mess that was going to be. And it took the safety off and put it in my mouth and was starting to pull the trigger. And I could feel me already leaving my body. I felt a vacuum from the barrel starting to draw me out, right? And I was being real careful because I was afraid I'd jerk at the last minute and blow this. Sorry if this is freaking anybody out. This is real talk. I was
Mm-hmm.
afraid I would jerk it, blow the side of my head off, and then end up, you know. And as I was taking the slack out of the trigger, I heard a clear, quiet voice, an angelic voice. And I believe voices like this speak to us all the time,
Mm-hmm.
but we can't hear them. We won't hear them. But and it was audible. So quiet, but crystal clear. The story's not yet written.
Mm-hmm.
And I went, huh? What? And I went back. In that moment, my life changed. I still had a lot of bad things to go through, but from that moment forward, some of the selfishness and self centeredness slowly started to leave me. And not that many months after that was the last time I used a drug or drank. And then
Mm-hmm.
that's when I found the 12-step programs and started to change my life. And you realize that we choose the families we come into, we choose the body and the DNA. And I'm healing 7 to 14 generations of trauma and DNA that we carry. And it's so obviously when you look back, and Lady K and Lady J bought me one of those DNA kits, right? Found
Yes.
out I'm 51% Scott, and it makes so much sense. And I've had little visions over the years of things. And I realized, and my father's family was so poor, and they came up north here, and he later became a chemical engineer, graduated from college. He ended up being brilliant in math and higher equations and stuff. He was just brilliant in that. And from my mother's family too. And you start to realize how all this fits together, and everything, even the bad stuff, the terrible, selfish decisions I made, the way I would scorch the earth all around me, that every one of these was for a purpose that taught me a lesson. Or, I've been the villain in a lot of other people's stories,
Mm-hmm.
but without that experience, I wouldn't be where I'm at now.
Absolutely.
Why don't you talk for a while?
You know, that is true what you're saying. If we don't go through these experiences, we can never be where we're at right now. You know, like I was listening keen what you were saying. There were a lot of awakening moments that happen, and these awakening moments, you felt it. You felt those awakening moments. Like, for instance, when you said the voice, you know, many times that voice speaks to us, but we don't understand, we don't listen. And because of that, we keep repeating cycles over and over again. We,
Yeah,
yeah, we keep repeating the
again.
cycles over and over again, you know. And another thing is that I like when you said that we chose our families, we chose our siblings before we get into here, into this lifetime. And my belief, I should know your belief, some people may not believe that we are capable of healing generations, you know, and it all depends on how we look at it. Some people believe, some people don't believe, you know, but when you really take a good look at your life, sometimes you find you may have a uncle or a aunt or even your mother or your father, right? When you look at them, you could see a pattern happening. You can see a pattern is happening, you know. And that's why many times people would say it stops with me. I'm going to put a full stop to this pattern that keep repeating itself all the time, you know. But you have to come to that place of self-awareness. You got to come to that place of understanding who you are. You have to come to that place of awakening So when you arrive at that place, you're able to see things on a totally different level. And in the journey, or on this journey called life, you find that once you start the awakening process, sometimes, for instance, like a book may show up in your life. You may listen to a podcast, and when you read the book or you listen to a podcast, or whatever it is that you listen to, it brings that awareness deeper. And then you say to yourself, oh wow, I now understand what's happening. So when we're walking this journey, right, we need to pause, and we really need to look at what is happening at this point in time in your life. You need to pause and look at it, and look at it in such a way at your ancestors as well. Look at your ancestors. See if it is something that is being reoccurring. And then you now have to say to yourself, can I change this? Because we have the ability to do it. We can do it. We can do it. But you have to come to that place of self-awareness. Because once you arrive to that place of self-awareness, you'll understand what's happening. And you, Tom, you went through all of these different experiences, situations, challenges, But what you did, you gather all the information through these experiences and challenges, and you look at it. And when you look at it, you understand exactly why these experiences happen. But again, you can only understand when you come to that place of awakening. That's the only way you can understand why these things happen in your life. Each of us go through different experiences. It's to wake us up. It's to wake us up. And each and every person that we meet on our journey here, it's a reflection of what the state we are going through at that point in time. It is a mirror. It's a mirror of what we are going through. And it depends on how you feel inside. That is what is going to show up outside. Because remember, we all are going through these healing phases. And things are going to show up is to help us to heal. That is why experiences, you don't curse your experiences. Because the experiences show up in order to help us to heal. We need these experiences to wake us up. Because could you imagine if you didn't have these experiences, what it would have been like? Explain to me, Tom, if we don't have these experiences.
One of the things is it makes sense. And I was driven by fear most of my life.
That's
Driven
another
by
thing.
fear and anger. And I was always moving, and I was a seeker. I would read all these books. I investigated a dozen different churches and religions. I was trying to find the magic pill that was going to fix me, that would make my life okay. And continued to drink and use. I was in and out of 12-step programs for 14 years. And then one day I was done. And that is when I started to live, a little over 28 years ago. And I just started to live. And they say in the 12-step programs, if you've been like addicted or alcoholic from the time you're 14, or like with me, 16, that's where you're at emotionally, if you're lucky when you stop.
Mhm.
So I had to go through an adolescence and try to grow up over those years. And they give you tools for that and people to help you if you're willing to listen and apply it. And I've always, like in college, man, I was all A's on theory, application, not so much. But by golly, I got to be where I'm at now
Mhm.
and found happiness. And I've got to tell a little story about Lady J and Lady K here. They paid for Diana and I to come out, and we stayed at the storied New Yorker hotel where Tesla used to have rooms. And we stayed there, and they paid for everything. And from the minute we got to the airport in Indianapolis where we flew out until we got back, the visit was just magical. We met so many wonderful people. You know, I remember there was this family, and they're from somewhere in Africa. And she was just this tiny, petite, just absolutely beautiful young woman. And she had 5 children, and the oldest was probably 13 or 14. And just looked at her. And the beautiful thing was, is we were watching these children take care of each other, take care of the little one. And she and a woman from, I don't know if they're going to the bathroom, what they were going and doing, but they said, would you watch our children and would you watch our bags? And we're like, okay. And, you know, and then they went and did whatever. But we had, and when we didn't know where to go, because the airport had completely changed, I hadn't flown out of there since 2004. And this guy showed us exactly where to go. And it was just one piece of kindness from another to that. I can't think of his name. Mr. Ed, your driver, picked us up in this beautiful limousine. And it was just magical from the time we got there till the time we got back. Random acts of kindness and
Yes.
beauty. And I was watching, almost all the people were from somewhere else in this airline flight going to Newark, New Jersey. And I just saw like people giving their seats up. These 2 great big guys from Haiti gave their seats up to this family and stuff. And it was just act after act of kindness. And then we got there, and they were at a trade show, and you had Lydia Bustler there, Dr. T,
Dr. Marcy.
Dr. Marcy, and yeah, Lydia Bustler. I remember seeing pictures.
Matt.
Right there.
You remember Matt was there
Matt,
as
oh
well?
yeah, Matt from England. My God, absolutely crazy. Yeah, he's a
Yes.
ranketeer of the first order. But what happened is, and I did a little of it too, and that's where that picture she has of me. That I'll pop this off so you can see it. Sure. And I even did some of it too, and I'm not a really sociable person, man. And they were going out in the aisles, and I always thought Joan was kind of standoffish. Yeah, and I only know her from like this, you know. And the whole crew was out in the aisles grabbing people. They'd have 2 or 3 or 4 people, brothers from everywhere in the world you can possibly imagine. You know, New York is truly a melting pot. And we hear all these bad things in the Midwest about New York. It was absolutely great the whole time. Granted, we weren't in the worst area. We weren't that far from 42nd Street, where we weren't that far from there. And every situation I met was just I can't explain it. The energy and everything and the people we saw there.
Mm-hmm.
I saw a woman who had just been on a television series in the New Yorker talking to a group of people. And I realized as they were breaking up, I said, boy, that's kind of a weird crew. Here's these old guys and these beautiful women and these tough guys with prison tattoos all over them and everything. And they're going like, oh, wow, man, talking to each other. I'm like, this doesn't make sense. And then I realized they're from the same 12-step program that I belong
Mm-hmm.
to.
Mm-hmm.
And and we're there eating at 11 or 12 at night. So they had been to a late meeting and they stopped there and ate, and just a beauty. But I remember how you guys would go out in the aisles. So she and her sister, particularly Joan, would meet these people and they just totally energy, they just totally focused on them. And people were drawn like moths to a flame. And you'd look at them and within 5 minutes they would have their arms around them.
Because Tom, you really don't know what people are going through. As I said before, you may look at someone, they may be smiling, but that's a mask, you know, that's a mask. Behind that mask, you really don't know how that person's feeling. You
But
really, really don't know.
there'd be, and they have a lot of pictures from there. And it
Yeah,
was just,
yeah,
it was an extraordinary experience watching these ladies and people, Dr. T, and then all, yeah. And
yeah.
we flew back the next day, but it was just, I can't explain it. It was a magical experience. And then we went to the house she was talking about, this beautiful home that she manifested with Mr. Twinkle, her husband. And he took me out walking through New York. I don't know, we walked 14. He even took me out of my way to show me some stuff. And when we were walking to go pick his vehicle up from where he works at, it was just magical out there. I saw all these different people, people running, and it seemed like, and people from every level and walk of life and every country and place of origin. I'd walk through there and make eye contact, and they were cool. They were like, yeah, you're a human, I'm a human, we're walking here, and that's all right.
Mm-hmm.
I can't explain it. That was my experience there.
Mm-hmm.
And so we fly back, and my car breaks down again just after that. It overheated, and I got it limping home, and another vehicle broke down. And
Mm-hmm.
I was freaking out, but I just gotten, my Social Security check. And I looked across the street, and there was an auto parts store. And this guy explained what to do, and I spent a whole bunch of money on it. I got it. I got it to run in it, and then I went and bought stuff and got it home, and had a friend help me repair it for virtually nothing.
Mm-hmm.
But that to me is an example. And this happened right that same weekend after we came home,
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
Sunday. And Diana wasn't feeling good, so I went by myself. I have somewhere where I go once a month for part of my 12-step work. And my God, it's just, I don't believe that I never realized how beautiful life can be
Yes.
and the connection. And I also want
Mm-hmm.
to tell that story that you said I should talk about. And I almost thought about writing an article for your magazine, which is beautiful, by the way. It's visually
Mm-hmm.
beautiful, all these foods, and
Yes.
they have places. It's beautifully put together. And Dr. Gadsden and several different people, write articles into it that
Yes.
have been on the show. But what happened so I make it into Sam's Club, which is a lot like Costco and that, where my God, we were trying to follow the lady, follow you through this store, man. There's gobs of people, man, probably 1,000 in there. You're like
Mm-hmm.
5 rows away from us and won't stop. You're grabbing stuff and running back and throwing it in a cart. I mean, that thing was like mounted by the time they got done. I wouldn't want to pay for all that stuff. And we didn't even have enough room for ourselves, and we had all this other stuff. And one of the vehicles was a Corvette, for God's sake. So, so we're got all this stuff all over us, plus everything from all the signs and posters and chair, everything you can imagine from this booth they set up. They spent a lot of money on that.
You just wanted to make you guys happy and welcome, you know?
Yeah. But yeah, oh God, the food was great. And then we met their neighbors that she talked about. I'm sure the same guy, just wonderful people, man. And I was there and I got to sit with Lydia Bustler. And we met, and my God, she's got a PhD in music and she trained at Juilliard, for God's sakes. You know, I'm like, how do you meet people like this? And I found out where she had a wreck. I was stationed there in the Navy and I know exactly where it happened to her. And she had a near death experience and we sat and
Wow.
talked. I was there. That's what I'm saying. I meet so many people that I've lived or gone through the area where they live. And again, I believe there's connections made there. I totally,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I believe it
Yes.
because you can look back and see and feel it. These
Yes.
young ladies came from Guyana, and
Mm-hmm.
they were raised very tough, very strict, but they were taught, they've been who they are now from the time they were little children, little girls,
Yes.
their hearts. And I personally believe, for me, that they didn't need to come back like so many people and young souls and souls coming back into the world. This is a beautiful time to be here.
Yes.
This is
Mm-hmm. Yes.
a time with humanity. And I know the
Mhm.
news tells us everything's terrible, but a lot of the things that are happening are to, like you shared earlier, are to awaken us.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's to awaken us. You know, the thing is that we we have to look at our lives in spite of what is happening. We have to examine ourselves, because when we examine ourselves, as I said before, we are able to see things on a totally different level. So in spite of what is happening around you, if there's a way how you chose to process it and look at it. So when you process and you look at it, you're able to see things on a different level. And there is where the beauty lies. Because when you can see, because we all see things on a different level. Some people see things as chaotic, and some people see things as just, you know what, this is normal, you know. So it all depends on how we look at things, and how we look at things, that is how we are able to go through transformation. Because sometimes we one time in a period of time in our lives, you may look at things with fear, with anger, and then another time now in your life, you look at things, you know what, I'm not angry about this anymore. I'm not fearful of this anymore. There is where now you understand that you have awakened. You understand that you went through that awakening process. So now the transformation happens. So you're looking at things now with a totally different eye. But again, we got to go through this process in order to meet that awakening process. You don't just arrive there. Through the process, the experiences and the challenges is a process that you go through in order to arrive at that awakening process. And when self-awareness happen, it's a light bulb. It's a magical moment that happened in our lives, and it helps us to understand more about life, about people, and about ourselves. And when those things happen, you now have a choice. You have a choice about the things that you're going to listen to. You have a choice about friendships. Because many times when transformation happening in our lives, a lot of people don't understand us anymore. The first thing they would say, oh, you changed. Yes, I am, because I have evolved. I'm changed. I'm not the person who you know back then. I'm a changed person. Your values change, your boundaries change, everything change. It starts to change. And it's quite okay because you have evolved. You're in the process of evolution. And once you're going through that process, you will never be the same. And it's quite okay. It's just quite okay. And allow yourself to go through these processes. Because when you go through, you learn. When you go through, you're able to gather all the tools necessary. Because remember, every day we are evolving. And the tools that we gather from each experience or challenge or situation, we need all of those tools as we move through life. Because you never know when things are going to rise in your life. You just never know. But once you have the right tools in your toolbox, you're able to use those tools to help yourself, to help your family. Yes, Diana, yes.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. There's the wicked redhead as we speak.
so,
Go ahead.
life is a journey, and letting go is a sacred act of transformation. And Tom, you came to that place of letting go of a lot of stuff. So you was able to experience that process of transformation. And when you live from that place of letting go, you're able to experience the beauty. You're able to experience that beauty. Here is Diana. Hi, Diana. How are you?
A little bit sore from falling down.
She
But
Yeah,
fell
that is
down.
what Tom was telling me that you fell. I'm so sorry to hear that. But you know what? You got a good husband at your side there, and he's there to help you.
I'm better. Yeah, she's 66 and she does not dye her hair.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
I agree. Love you, baby.
The-
I try to remember to tell I was never happy before. I try to tell her every day how grateful I am that she's still in my life and that we're in each other's lives.
yes. Yeah.
And one of the things I was going to talk about that I believe, because I was driven by fear of hell, and I was very socially and inept, to say the least. I'm pretty deep on the spectrum, and or I was and still am. I don't understand social situations and miscues.
Mhm.
And one of the things I wanted to say, and I've been kind of close to death more than once, particularly with some of the work I was doing in bomb disposal and some of the other things. This life is safe.
Mhm.
We're safe.
Mhm.
We choose the major experiences that we are brought into this life. The two
Mhm.
ladies that grew up in Guyana and then came here,
Mhm.
and they were feeding the homeless and clothing the homeless, and got an award from the United Nations in their home country with a group of other people that they're working with.
Mhm.
And they came here, and their life, because they were supposed to. This is part of their life mission.
Mhm.
And I just read a book written about Guyana, because now with oil discovered there, suddenly it's going to change big time.
Mhm.
Possibly not for the better, because it's going to, humans are humans, men are men. Greed
Yes.
is greed.
Yes. Yes.
Greed is greed.
Mm-hmm.
And, the beautiful way you grew up. I remember there was a picture. You took a trip up a river, right?
Yes.
And you went to that farm, and there was this guy that looked like he was just great, big, muscular, happy guy. And he looked like he was mostly one of the local tribes, but he was
Yes.
stocky and strong. And he wasn't wearing a shirt, and he was working out in this farm, and he was digging up kava. Great kava, right?
Cassava. Yes. Cassava.
Cassava, cassava,
Yes.
excuse me. This great big roots, and he was so proud, and he was digging them up and showing them to everybody. And he was so pure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He was so delighted and so happy to be exactly who he was and where he was. He
Mm-hmm.
was not affected.
Right.
They lived far enough away from civilization where he had the way we used to be as people,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
pure of heart
Yes.
and real. And the funny thing was, and she took a video, um, I heard Karen talking, and the only word I understood of her patois was boy, boy. I didn't understand another word she said. And I was like, "Wow." I said, that's hilarious.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. That was quite an experience, because the thing is that when we when we go, because when you go into these country areas, it was a long stretch of water you had to travel on by boat to get into this part where they do the farming, and everything there is organic.
Mm.
That was the beauty. Everything there was organic. There was no fertilizer being used there to plant nothing. And that was the beauty, to see that you rely on Mother Nature to do the work that you're looking for. You're not forcing growth. You're just allowing Mother Nature to take charge of the crops that you're planting. But
And
a lot of time we force growth, you
you would,
know.
particularly here where I live, man, it's pollute. I won't even get into it.
Yeah.
They spray, bug spray from planes, and it flies right over the house, and I guarantee you we get hit with it. But but you would know something about that, because as little girls, you would come home and work in that garden every day when you would come home from school.
Yes.
Right, you
Yes.
are almost right on the equator, so I can't even imagine how hot it
Yes.
was. And you and Joan, and I can see you. You probably started out with a hand pump and pails of water, and you go and water all these crops
Yeah.
and the trees and everything.
Yeah. We
You
had a
did it
kitchen
when you
garden. And then the beautiful thing is that my grandmother, she would know when we get the crop, she would send us out to share it out in the community to give people, to homes that she would say, well, go to this home. They don't have enough. You guys just carry it to this particular home and give it to them because they need it. So what we're doing now, it's from since way back. It's
eh,
nothing new to myself and Joan.
this
What we
is
do, we are custom doing it.
you
We are
you
custom giving.
you came in and were raised rather strict by women, who your mother and your grandmother,
Hmm.
to
Yeah.
raise you to be exactly who you are today. And what
Yeah.
I love is you shared with me your your DNA.
The
You have blood from Punjab area of India.
Punjabi,
Yeah, Punjab
Fiji,
area,
Irish,
Fiji,
Scotland.
Irish, Mayan, where we spend life around 780, but we won't get it,
Yeah.
but and then African, of course,
Yes.
and something else. I don't remember, but
The Lesser Antilles.
yeah, yeah. And through like the Mayan area all the way through the Caribbean
Yes.
down to where you are.
Yes.
So you've got so many bloodlines, and it's like, wow, how in the heck did that happen?
I don't
It
know. It
can't, well,
happened.
no, that unique blend was to give you and make you exactly who you are today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And something you just touched under the unique blend is to help us to understand people of the different countries, is to help you to understand the people,
I now have friends in meat. You'll have to go
Yes.
on with this some morning.
Yes.
Uh, Soham and
Right. So
diff-
yeah.
people from India. There's a group of people from India, and there's even people in this group from Pakistan and England. People from all over the world. People that you've had in your show
Mm-hmm.
that gather together and do things. And
Yes.
I was able to make a connection there through you ladies.
Yeah.
And and we have all these connections all around the world through the work you
Yes.
do.
Yes. We are so grateful, we are so honored, we are so humble, to be here at this point in time, because it's like we are here to give back to the world. We are here to help humanity. And it's a blessing when you can really do that, because a lot of people need a lot of help, and the help don't only have to be financial help. It could be holding a space for someone, listening to this story, help them to unpack, help them to become vulnerable. It's all about helping someone. And when you can do that, it makes you feel really good that you're really helping humanity. It really, really makes you feel good that you're helping humanity, and it's a true honor. It's such a blessing to be here at this point in time.
And
It's an honor and blessing.
one thing I can say after meeting these ladies in person, um, one of the things like her sister Joan, both of them get up at 3:30 in the morning because that's the magic hour when things are quiet.
Yes.
And they both meditate and do whatever breathing meditation and prayer,
Mm-hmm.
do their spiritual work for about an hour before they start their day,
Yeah.
so that they have that. And both of them, as part of their meditation, ask God, what can we do for humanity today?
Yes.
This is
Yes.
how they live their life. And I've shared it before. Joan would send me messages. Are you okay? What's going on with you at 12:30 in the morning? I'm like, what's wrong with you? Why are you worrying about about me when you're going to wake up in 3 hours?
Yeah.
What are you thinking? And what they're thinking is
Yes.
exactly who they are. They're caregivers for
Yes.
people in end of life. And
Yes. Mm-hmm. It's just, Tom, it's just magical. It's a blessing, as I said. It's just an honor. It's just, we're just here to help. We are just here to help, Tom.
for real, I mean,
We're just here to help
you hear a
in
lot of
whatever way
stuff.
we can.
You hear and see a lot of things from all kinds of people with
Yeah.
agendas that are supposed to be here. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I can guarantee you that's not these two ladies
No, that's not our mission.
and their entourage around the world.
Yeah,
And one of the
that's not
things
our mission. No.
that I want to leave you with a couple of thoughts here. Number one, this life is safe. You're an eternal soul. I totally
Yes.
believe that. I can feel that in my heart
Yes.
as I'm talking now.
Yes.
And that was, I'm going in they're going to go in and do a procedure. They're going to do a catheterization. They're going to go into my heart tomorrow. So we're going to have to get up early in the morning for the simple reason that I haven't been eating and living right. And I decided, and I had this done like in November of 23. They went and put a stent in. I was having congestive heart failure, different trouble. And I'm kind of like, my diet is not good, which is one of their fortes. And I'm like, the country, the Veterans Hospital, and all these people are spending all this money to make up for my bad choices. And I'm like, we're done. We're done eating like that. We're done. I'm done being self-indulgent, you know. And one thing I wanted to stress again, this life is safe. You will leave here and go back to your true home and come back through here as many times as you choose.
Sure.
You chose this path. And those of us that choose to incarnate in the 3D, including Earth, and I've seen visions of different places. I won't get into that. We're kind of on the cusp of the universe. We're here to raise up source where we come from, to expand knowledge and experience of what is not love. And this is the place where we learn it. But we also learn to love unconditionally.
But the first thing we need to do is love ourselves. That's the first thing. We got to love ourselves.
I'm working on it.
You got to love yourself. You got to love yourself. Yes, you got to love yourself. You got to be true to yourself.
And
you got to be true.
Also, you never know when love and happiness can find you.
Sure.
If it can come to us with our scarred lives and find happiness, where I wake up in the morning, I look over and I'm like, heck yeah.
Yes.
I'm so happy.
Yes.
There's Brianna.
You know, Tom, it was a true honor for you to come and to really share your story with us, because a lot of times people need to hear these stories. We all are going through something, but when we able to share and be vulnerable, and our story may touch someone's life, and it's the touching, it's the awakening moment that is beautiful and magical. Because when you can hear something and it can touch you in a very deep way and bring you to that level of awareness, there is where the magic happens. Because then you start to experience the transformation. You start to think different. You start to do things different. And as I said before, your boundaries change, your values, everything starts to change in your life. And the awakening moment when we can really feel it within our being is trusting yourself. Putting that trust in you and knowing that, you know what? I am here for a reason. I am here for a purpose. And I'm going to trust myself in this moments of awakening. So this evening, Tom, I just want to thank you. We just want to thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your story. Where I broke down is where I live, and love later in life. Because as I said in the opening, the breakdown could happen in so many levels. It could be emotional, it could be spiritual, it could be mechanical. The breakdown, it could happen in the body. So it is so much to add on that. And as you move along this week, pause, look at yourself. Just look at yourself, look at your life. Be honest with yourself. Write in your journal, because you want to live your true, authentic self. Sometimes you really got to strip yourself down and start to zoom into all the areas of your life. That is why we like to coach from the 12 components, because you zoom into your relationship. You zoom into your spirituality. Am I taking the time to pour back into myself? What modality should I use to pour back into myself? Look at your home environment. Look at your finances. Look at your health. Look at your physical activity. Are you moving enough? Or you need or you need to move in such a way in your life of getting rid of stuff from your life, detoxing yourself before 2025 is over. So go into all of these areas in your life this week and see all the things that you need to address, because many times we're not addressing these things. And because we're not addressing these things start to break down. You start to get a breakdown. So we highly encourage you this week is to sit back with yourself and look at yourself in all the areas of your life. And if you really don't like what you're seeing, you have a choice, and you can make that choice to transform yourself. Only you can do it. Nobody else can do it for you. Only you can do it.
Can I
Of
share?
course.
Share. I just want to share. I wanted to finish a thought. I kind of jump all over the place when I
Yes.
talk. I wanted to share the story I shared with you. So I had this wonderful experience from the time we arrived at the airport in Indianapolis, through Newark, through New York, coming back, Mr. Ed driving us around in that beautiful, shiny Suburban all over the place. And we came back home, and like I said, my vehicle overheated and broke down. I got it working enough to get it home. And, I went in and went to Sam's Club. And this is a bigger city that's south of here. And there's all kinds of people there because there's plants that employ, people from all over the world. And there are two great big guys, about 6'4", and they're probably from Haiti or somewhere in Africa. And I got used to looking people in the eyes and going, recognizing them, not staring, I won't look at you, And I went there, and I was in a long line to go out. They check you when you go out to make sure you're not stealing anything and everything's cool, and the place was packed. And I was going to let these guys in, but I noticed when I looked at people in this factory town where some big auto manufacturers and different people are, I mean, the unhappiness and the anger and the negativity in them. And I'm like, my God, I just came from New York. And you almost didn't see that anywhere. And here it was back here in Indiana. And there were these two guys up there, and they looked angry, great big dudes. And I looked at them, and they're like, who are you to be looking at us? What's your deal? Like they take it as some sort of a challenge. And it kind of broke my heart, and asked them, hey, you can come in, you guys, and go ahead. I mean, they said, nope, you're there ahead of us. So I'm like, okay, And I thought about that on the drive home, and I wept. To come back to this unhappiness and anger.
But you see, Tom, another thing too, right? Is that you never know what the other person is processing.
We have no idea what was going
We
on
don't
there
know.
before I saw them, how rudely they were treated, or you know what I mean? You don't know what
You just don't know. You don't. People are walking around with so many pent up feelings. So many pent up feelings people are walking around with. And sometimes people are just waiting for an outburst. And you may say something that trigger it. And it has nothing to do with you. It's the way how they're feeling internal. And because of the internal, that is how they outburst. That is why, as I said before, we always have to be grounded, centered, and balanced. Because if we're not grounded, centered, and balanced when we get out there, your whole world could turn upside down by someone. And
it,
then you get into an argument with people, which you don't need to, because the way how that person is feeling, it has nothing to do with you. You know, and many times too, if you flip the script, many times you find that we need to run into these people in order to heal an aspect in our lives too. You know, because many times people, we are mirroring each other. So sometimes you run into an individual and they're behaving so angry. Just pause and look at that person. And then now you got to look at yourself as well. Because sometimes you find there's an aspect of area in your life that needs to be healed as well. And many times we are pushing things down. We are pushing things down and not addressing things. Go ahead, Tom.
Just, you know, I'm in 12-step programs, and the compassion you find after you lived your life, and I was in and out so many years, and all the horror that I experienced and that I created, and all the chaos and madness. And then when you see others going through it, and then sometimes people, oh, I can't believe they did that. And I'm like, how can they not?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's beautiful when you get somebody that's willing to make the change.
Yes.
And suffer the pain that they're going to have to come through to change their life.
Yes.
And it's like, it's beautiful when it happens.
Then the awakening happened is beautiful.
Exactly.
It's really beautiful.
But you can't predict it.
You don't know.
And like an old guy told me, and he knew that I wasn't ready, even though I was, you know, going to meetings and doing things. He said, you're not done till you're done.
Yes.
And we don't decide to live until we're ready to start living.
Yes. I like that. Yes.
And if someone like Diane and I, with some really, really bad road behind us, can find happiness and value in life and be of value to humanity, anybody can do this.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely, Tom. You're absolutely right.
I got to get up at about 5:30 in the morning.
Yes.
I probably better bail out of here.
Yeah, you know, Tom, again, it was a pleasure having you here this evening and sharing your story. Be so vulnerable with us because, as I said before, it will help someone this evening to understand that they can find love, and wherever they broke down, look for the meaning in that broke down. Look for the meaning. And to the audience, we just want to thank you so much for taking the time and sitting with us this evening, because it's a true honor to have you in the studio with us as well. And don't forget that look at your life, see where things are breaking down, and start to address it. Because the question I'm going to leave with you is, are you ready to shed what isn't you? Are you ready to shed what isn't you? And don't forget to subscribe to Soul Light and Body, that you will never miss none of these episodes. And also don't forget to subscribe for our magazines. It's free of cost. We have the digital version and the hard copy version. And we have Your Gut in You and Self-Care is Intentional. The links are all there to purchase a book on Amazon. They're very life-changing books. And also 246 Bajan Vibes Family Classified Ads. You can check it. It's all in the footnotes below. So we just want to thank each and every one of you for joining us on IG, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and the 246 Bajan Vibes family. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a fabulous week. See you here next week in another fabulous subject. Tommy, thank you once again. Much love to you all.
You have all these wonderful guests on. I'm like, okay.
Tom, you're great.
Doesn't make a lot of sense to me, but if it works,
it makes a lot of sense to us. Love you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.